All right, let's get started. My name is Emma Cooper. I'm a program manager on the PowerApps product team. And in this session, we'll talk about how to make responsive Canvas apps that work across a variety of screen sizes. So anybody who knows PowerApps knows that one of the first decisions that you make when you create a Canvas app is, do you want a tablet or do you want a phone? This is the current state that is today. However, shortly ago, we announced the ability in order to use expressions to create responsive apps. Using the regular data flow going in PowerApps and those Excel-like expressions, we actually allow you to access the app width and app height at runtime in order to reflow, resize, and respond based on what size your screen is. So a brief example of this for anybody who hasn't seen it before is that these numbers right here are actually being returned live based on the size of the window. Now, this is important because based on the size that's returned, I can say, hey, this button, this rectangle, I want you to take the parent width, so the full screen width. I want you to fill that width no matter what size the screen is at. And that's a basic example, but if you take that small example and apply it to every control that's on your screen, you can actually do some really interesting things. So briefly, these will be the take-home points I want you to come with. Plan before you make. Break down the different scenarios and use hierarchy inside of your app. Use breakpoints for different device size experiences. And there will be more to come for responsiveness on Canvas apps. So plan before you make. Before creating a responsive app, you should probably know what devices it's going to be used on. Not just for responsive apps, but apps in general. It seems kind of obvious, but one of the things is that if I only need a phone app, and that's all I'm ever going to need, why am I designing for something that will size and scale to fit on the web? I want it to be specially designed for the phone. If I want phone and web, that's also something that's good to know, so I'm able to decide what is useful for the device and so on. The next part is dissect the app into patterns if you're going to have multiple different form factors. So in the picture that's on the screen here, I have a gallery and a details section, master detail. On a phone, it's probably best practice to put the gallery on one screen and have a bunch of records, and then hit next and go to the next screen in order to see the details. However, when I have a bit more real estate on the web, I want that all on one screen. I want to have my list, my gallery items, and be able to fill it, see the details as I click on each one on the other side. So that's important to know when I'm designing for responsiveness. The other things is that if there's any differences in navigation, like that example I just gave, you know, if I'm on a phone screen that's at that size, I want to navigate to another screen. If I'm on the full size, I don't want to navigate to another screen. I just want to stay on the same page that I was on and change the view. And so just kind of thinking about all those different things before you get started will help. The next thing is that you'd want to structure common experiences together. With this type of using expressions in order to make things reflow, I want all of my header items to be together. And the reasoning for this is that if I have my header in a section, and I have my form in a section, my galleries in another different area, I'm able to take all those pieces and reflow them how I want using the expressions. And this is really powerful because that's one of the basic things that makes responsiveness feel so satisfying on different devices. The other thing that this does is that when using expressions, this allows us to reference the parent. So if I have a button inside of a group, I can reference the group size and say, hey, if the group size is moving around, the button will stay inside and move around with it. The other point is in using breakpoints. So breakpoints are basically something you can reference inside the app that give you a certain width that you would want to use in order to create different experiences. So I have small, which is like, your phone mobile devices. I have medium, which is like, tablet upright. And then I have large, which is tablet landscape, and some different web browsers based on the device size, and then extra large is those larger monitors, full web pages. And being able to reference these inside the app allows me to change the visibility of the items. A common example would be if I have a big web application, sometimes I have a lot of grids, a lot of rows, a lot of content, and squishing that all down into the mobile form factor isn't always the best experiences for people who are on that device. And so knowing when somebody is accessing something on a smaller width, smaller screen enables me to be able to hide things that they don't need on that device. Likewise, it gives me the ability to show things that are specific to that type of device. For example, if I'm on the web and I'm uploading pictures, I likely don't want a camera control taking photos while I'm on my laptop. I probably want the default experience to be to file upload. Versus when I'm on my phone, it might be more convenient, more task focused to enable the camera by default. And so breakpoints enable me to switch all of these things around based on size. And the example I have right here is enabling navigating to a different screen for small devices and not for large devices. And the last thing before we jump into demos is that there's more to come. Responsiveness is such a big deal in the world today that we can't stop at just phone, just tablet. Don't get me wrong, those are super powerful. People are doing awesome things with those today. But the reality of the world we live in is that, screens are getting larger, aspect ratios are also getting larger. We need to be able to reflow, respawn, be task-based focused across all devices. Now, I'm going to jump over into some demos. We're going to take a look at one that's responsive on tablet web form factor, and then one that's cross form factor. Cool. That was harmless. Okay. So on this screen, I have a typical sample app that I just took and I downloaded off of our create page on the portal. So for anybody who knows Canvas apps, this would look pretty familiar. I have some bars on the side of the screen because, I have that fixed aspect ratio, and that doesn't change. Now, if I move it around, we can see what happens is that, it moves with it, and I get scroll bars if I go smaller than what it is. So on this other app, that I've gone and created responsive with all different expressions, we can see that it takes up the full size of the screen. So if I resize it, it grows and shrinks in order to fit that entire screen. And navigating within it, again, we can see it takes up the full real estate available to me on my device. And if I move it around, I can see that, it moves around. You can see some of the different font resizing. You can see the different sizing on the search bar, getting smaller or larger depending on the size, and so on. The other demo that I have should look familiar to anybody who's been from Access or who's working from Access. So I have here an orders form. So this is taking up, again, the entire real estate of the screen. So just to jog our memories, if I jump back to the Service Desk tablet one, it's not taking up the full size of the screen. I've got those bars. It's at a fixed space. So this one's taking up the full screen. And so, I can go and I can add new things in here, and so on. If I click on a different order, it'll go and it'll change the context that I'm in like a master detail. But the thing that is that I've done on here, and we're just going to view it on the browser, is that if I shrink it down, there's no more form. So if I was on a phone, I would just have this gallery on my phone and be able to view all of the different items that are there. And now when I click on this guy, I'm navigated to a focus screen for my app. And I have a bug in the top there, but that's fine. Focus screen for my form for that item. And that other part, the products that were at the bottom, I've also made the experience so that I can navigate to that screen to see that focused experience as well, and go back. So enabling this across devices is really powerful and is something that is pretty new. Don't get me wrong, this took a little bit of work. I worked on it all day yesterday, but putting in that extra work to enable managing one app across devices instead of managing two apps for different selected devices gives you a lot of power. So that's the brief demo. And then inside the app, I wanted to take a look at a couple different key scenarios inside of here. So for that gallery, that example that I had, we can see on my screen inside here, and my Zoom is not working. Hopefully everyone can see some of the text. But basically what this is doing is that hey, select this item in the gallery, and depending on the screen size using a switch statement, we'll check and see, okay, what's the active screen size? And if it's small, we're going to navigate to another screen. If it's, I'm going to make this bigger. If it's small, we're going to navigate to another screen. If it's medium, we're also going to navigate to another screen to have that focus. And if it's not small or medium, meaning that we're on a large or extra large device like the web, we're not going to navigate anywhere. It's just going to stay where it is and select that item that's inside of the gallery. Now, another thing just for sizing purposes is that for my header that I have here, the width that we have, I've set it to be parent.width. That's the same example we saw at the beginning, but across all of my different screens, this header took up the entire width, whether it was on the phone or on my web device as well. Now, different positioning that you can have inside of it gets a little more tricky because you reference other things that are on the screen. So in my formula here, for this particular item inside my gallery, I'm taking the gallery width and I'm subtracting the arrow width and also the width of the actual text box. So, and it's some padding. So what this does is that it says, hey, this arrow, this text box, will take the entire width, this one, plus the space of this one, and it'll keep it here. No matter where that arrow goes, no matter what size happens, it's going to reflow like that. So these are basic concepts, but if you take all of these different tiny concepts and apply them to every control on the screen, you can get that responsive behavior like I showed. Now, one of the best references I can give for people who are wanting to get started is this document, Create Responsive Layouts in Canvas Apps. So this is available to everyone on our Microsoft Docs page, and it has all of those different scenarios we were talking about. If I want to, change upper and lower height, if I want to make something stick to the middle or, stick to one side, it has all of the different patterns for all of the different expressions that you could want. And sometimes, even yesterday, I used this all day in order to create those apps. And so this is one of the best places you can go to get started. It explains in thorough detail everything that you could need, including the breakpoints and everything else. So that's really all I had. I went through that pretty quickly. I can leave some time for questions if there's other things that you'd want to see. Question over there. Yes. So the question is that right now I'm creating phone screens, and I'm starting to look at using components. Now, am I able to use those across screens, across devices, across screens? And yes, components play so well into this story. In fact, they benefit it so much. The reason why I didn't use it here, because Canvas components aren't yet generally available, and so I just wanted to show what is currently here. But you can imagine that, hey, if I just wanted this to be a component, and all of those same resizing, reflowing expressions apply to each component, if I do the work there, I can just componentize this, plop it onto the next screen, don't redo any work. I can still leverage copy and paste as well, which is what I did for this app, is that I just copied this form that I already did all the logic on, I copied it to the next screen. And so that's kind of how you can leverage components in the future when they're GA in order to make building responsive apps easier, as well as leverage copy-paste, which is available today, to make that workflow go faster. Cool. Any other questions? So I can show you that. So if I resize it, it's down to phone, and if I resize it back, pardon? Yeah. So that if you set it up that way, it would work. The reason I didn't is that because the scenario, and again, thinking about how I envision my app to be used. The question for people who didn't hear was, hey, on the next screen that you designed for the phone, is it still responsive if I resized it out? And I can't remember if I did the full work for that, but we can see. If I resize it down, I go to the next screen, I go to my form. And so I copied it from the previous screen, so it would still use all of the different components to resize on this page as well. But it wasn't my intention that it should be used on there, because I imagine that this size would only be used on the mobile device. So again, if you make it responsive, it doesn't hurt for any of the components going across each screen. But if you're designing only for mobile only, then you can continue to do what you do today. Same thing for tablet, etc. Cool. Sorry? Say one more time. So how does it refresh? No, so in terms of the actual data flow that happens is that it's all based on top of the size of the viewport that's returning. So for example, I'm not doing anything with the data that's behind. I'm just showing and hiding what I need in order to make that happen. So if I return an app width, which is available to me all the time, we're constantly querying that with the data flow of how PowerApps works, but I'm not doing anything with the data in behind. Does that help answer?
Yeah, we have some things where on hitting a screen, it refreshes the data source, and so I didn't want it to refresh as the refresh.
Yeah, no. The concern was for the data refreshing while the app size is changing, and they're entirely disconnected. The viewport and the sizing and the positioning of all the controls on the screen are separate from the actual data flow, through the connectors and everything itself. And I think I'm pretty much at time here. Vivek? Mm-hmm. So the question was, okay, I'm starting with all these mobile devices. How am I going to make them responsive? Would it be easier to start with a tablet app and make that respond? How are we going to move those along? And the answer is that you can still make the phone size responsive, right? Like, it just kind of like hurts your mind a little more to think about it, but it has the exact same data flow properties, right? And so it works that way. And the other thing is that if you wanted to start from a tablet, you could componentize or copy and paste everything over to get that bigger size if you wanted to start there and make that more responsive that way. However, in the future, to nail it home, is that we do really want to improve the responsive experiences in order to make the world of model-driven apps and Canvas apps fit better together, enable more responsive by default without everyone having to write these expressions to enable those responsive apps. Cool. Well, thank you so much. I'll be around for questions or particulars. Thank you.